Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. My colleague and co-host, Gordon Chang, is here with me. Gordon of Forbes.com. Gordon, it's a very good evening to you. We have a spectacular treat for everyone tonight. Will you introduce our guest, please? Jisheng.
And he's sitting right to your left, John, author of a tremendous book called Tombstone about the Great Leap Forward. To his left is Rose Tang, and to her left is the great Amity Shlaes.
Amity Shlaes is here because the author, Tombstone is the book, The Great Chinese Famine, 1958 to 1962. We're going to discuss what this book contains and why it's exciting, but it's especially important. Amity, good evening to you. Amity is the author of Coolidge. You will all recall that Amity has been here many times to talk about American politics. Tonight we're going to talk about Chinese history and Chinese history politics. Amity, the author, Yang Jisheng, is in America to receive an award within these last hours, the Hayek Award. What is that for? What was the award recognizing in Tombstone?
The award is the other Pulitzer, the big prize you haven't yet heard of that you want to hear about. It's called the Hayek Prize. It's sponsored by the Manhattan Institute here in New York. The prize is given to that book that best shows the meaning of the work of Friedrich von Hayek, the Austrian economist. Hayek taught us, John, that, one thing he taught us is that governments are very arrogant and undertake absurd, perverse projects. And another thing he taught us is that he wrote a book called The Road to Serfdom, that you might think you have capitalism, but you march along slowly adding a government program here and there, and pretty soon you get to serfdom. That is a situation where you require dictatorship. So this prize of the Manhattan Institute is named after this philosopher. He taught here in the United States. He won the Nobel Prize, but he's not always taught at our universities. And we have an especially interesting winner, shall I say now, this year. A wonderful book about a terrible event in China, Tombstone, by Yeng Jisheng. The book has to do with Hayek in the following way, and he will expand on this, that in the Great Leap Forward, back in the dark past of China lost many millions of people to a perverse project Hayek would have identified of quick industrialization, confiscation of crops, general government arrogance of the worst kind. So this book has won the Hayek Prize, and Mr. Yang and Rose Tang, his interpreter, have come tonight to talk to your listeners about this.
Wonderful. Yang Jisheng, I begin by congratulating you. Rose Tang will translate to the author. The author will respond, and Rose will help us follow this. I congratulate the author, Yang Jisheng, and my first question to him is, in taking on a project of this scale, what was his hope for the book? What was his brightest dream to achieve right now?
Thank you, John. 像他说的呢，就是恭喜你得这个大奖。你写这个书是个很大的一个项目，你当时写的时候有些什么希望？希望写的这个书能够带些什么变化？
Rose, because we have Chinese speakers, you can speak right into the microphone.
Okay.
Go ahead, say it again.
Sure.
So they do understand us.
就是恭喜杨先生得了这个大奖。这本书是一个很巨大的、很艰巨的一个项目。杨先生，你在写这个书的过程当中，你当时是对中国有些什么期望？你希望以后中国有些什么变化？
我写本书的目的就是记下这一段悲惨的历史，就是希望以后不再重复出现这样的历史。
The reason why I wanted to take up this project, to write this book, was that I wanted to record such a tragic period in Chinese history, and I'm hoping China will not repeat this history.
Mr. Yang, what was the Great Leap Forward, and what is its place in Chinese history?
这个大饥荒在中国这个历史上你是怎么评价的？这个历史上的地位？
是空前的，历史上从来没有这么大规模的饿死这么多人。
the Great Famine was unprecedented in Chinese history. Throughout Chinese history, we had never had such a famine when so many millions of people died.
那以后的政治也有重大影响。如果没有大饥荒，就不可能有疫情，就不可能文化大革命，也不可能有改革开放，都连在一起的。
So and also the Great Famine brought a series of political campaigns and brought about a series of historic eras. Without the Great Famine, we wouldn't have had the full clearance campaign. We wouldn't have the Cultural Revolution. And without the Cultural Revolution, we would not have had China's economic reforms.
This is a period, 1958 to 1962, that is generally very difficult for Americans to follow because at the time, the Cold War, America was told that the enemy was in Moscow and the enemy was in Beijing. And the enemy was the face of communism, a tyranny. And if we do not guard very carefully, we'll be overrun by communism in this country. So the famine is unavailable to American education. Amity, you and I went through the education school as well as anybody in the 1950s. They didn't teach it to us. So I want to help the younger people now, Rose. Ask the author, the famine, is it an important part of education in China? We didn't have it. Do they have it today? Do they know what happened in these 4 years?
作为美国人来讲的话，我们50年代的时候，那时候是冷战时期，和我们的教育就是，冷战，我们的敌人，美国的敌人是苏联，在莫斯科，美国的敌人是中国，那个时候我和 Amity 我们没有我们在学校没有学到关于大饥荒的这些教材，也不知道大饥荒是怎么回事儿。我是想问杨先生，现在这个中国的学校，中国的学生有没有在学校学到关于大饥荒的？
中国的教材没有这个方面的内容，但是有些老师个别的讲一些。
There's no mentioning of the great famine in Chinese school textbooks in China now, but some teachers may mention it.
No mention? No.
In the textbooks.
Gordon, does that make sense? They can't talk about where the people disappeared?
In these great tragedies in the People's Republic, many of these incidents, no matter how significant we may view them, are not discussed or are discussed in very whitewashed tones.
Amity, the book is I'm holding the book right now, okay? It's available on Amazon. Everybody has access to Amazon, so it's not a secret, Amity.
It's not a secret, and it's published in many languages, but it's not published in China. Is that right, Rose?
It's banned in China still.
It's banned in China.
It was published in Hong Kong.
So can you imagine a book that does so well overseas, but not at home? And what I found very interesting was often when I encountered Chinese people, when I went to China, including Chinese scholars, they weren't so interested in talking about the past. I'd say, what happened? And long ago, I encountered a great economist from the World Bank or maybe the IMF and asked him about the past. And he said he had lost a grandmother in the Great Famine. And I said, what happened then? He said, why concentrate on the past? Well, you know, it's so dark. And I thought that was common sense. But then I thought, of course, it's good to know the past so you don't repeat it. Santayana, you know, we always say this. Why is it China doesn't want to know this and doesn't teach it? And that awakened my curiosity long ago. How come people didn't know about this past or want to talk about it? And it's so significant, such a large number of losses in terms of human life. Even in the demographic charts of China, you can see that it affects all kinds of things because the people are just missing that cohort, those who would have been born between 59 and 60 or 61 or who died in that period.
We're going to explore, when we come back, more of the Great Famine, this missing piece in the education of Amity Shlaes and John Batchelor, and apparently the young people of China. We're very pleased to welcome to the studio, Gordon Chang's here with me as my co-host, Amity Shlaes, the author of Coolidge, and the author receiving the 2013 Hayek Prize from the Manhattan Institute, Yeng Jisheng. The book is Tombstone, The Great Chinese Famine, 1958 to 1962. Now that we've established that nobody knows anything about it, we'll talk about the details. And Rose Tang, his translator as well. We're getting used to the idea of talking in two languages on the radio, but remember, it's the 21st century. This is a global story. I'm John Batchelor.